All right, welcome back. We are game 1116. That's game programming 3. And that's in the fall 2025 semester at Georgian. And it's week 9, part 2 of our broadcast and recording. All right. So in the last part, what we did was we created very simple kind of uh, interactions, right? So where I can click the left mouse button and then do an attack, and it's random. And I can actually slide. Take a look at that sliding, right? I can slide around. It's not a great thing right now that's happening. I can even jump while I'm doing it. And things don't look quite right. We're going to fix these over the next couple weeks. But for today, what I want to work on is the next piece. So we're all the way down to here. So let's work with C++ more. So one thing I want to talk about again as a reminder is what an interface is. If you guys remember what the interface is like, it's kind of like a contract. And there's a set of functions that the interface defines. And what we must do is if you implement the interface, right? That's how OOP works, then you must implement the functions that are related to the interface. Okay, it's a must override situation, right? And again, it allows us to, instead of having multiple inheritance, which is possible only in C++, no other language really supports multiple inheritance. That means like two classes that you're inheriting from, and there's problems. You can create something called the deadly diamond, where you inherit from two classes that come inbound, but meanwhile from there it goes somewhere else. It's really bad, right? And then also there could be an ambiguity between two classes that share the same function. Which function, if they're both called interact, which one do you take? The one from class A or the one from class B? So that's kind of weird. So instead of that, it kind of creates a little communication bridge between classes. That's what it does, and it creates a contract. So what we want to do, here's the example of a use case that we're going to use, the interaction system. So again, first thing we do is create an interface. Let's call it interactable interface, let's say as an example. With a function like interact, there might be an actor, an interactor. In our case, it's going to be called character instigator. That's what we're going to use. And this defines kind of like what will happen, some kind of interaction, but not how it happens. The how happens specifically for each class that implements the interface. So example, you might have an interact method, but that method is going to be different depending on what you do. For example, when I interact with a door, I'm going to open it. When I'm interacting with a sword, depending on what I'm doing with it, maybe I'll pick it up, as an example, or stow it, or take it out, kind of thing. Those are interactions we can do, and they're all different. If I interact with a switch or something like that on some kind of like massive, control panel or something, then that switch will do something different with that interaction, Or if I'm interacting with an NPC, maybe I'll have a dialogue, right? So that's what allow me to do. So what I first want to do is I want to make an Unreal interface. Let's do that. So again, to do that, I'm going to go to classes here, and kind of select new C++ class. You can also do it from here, tools, new C++ class. I'll be okay. I'm just going to do it here, new C++ class. I'm going to scroll down all the way in common classes until I see Unreal interface, this one, okay? And then click next. What I want to call this is the interactable interface. That's what I want. So this is what this thing is going to be called. Just renaming it just like the PowerPoint, and create class. So let's let it do its thing. What this is going to do is going to add in the interactable interface inside of our project, and wait until Unreal Engine working alongside with Visual Studio is done. This is the live coding window, and when this shows green at the bottom, right, then we know that the changes have been done. One thing to note is this is like me pressing Control Alt F11. That's what it's like. Okay, from within Visual Studio, you can see here I have the interactable interface. We want to add in something else. Now that we have that, I want to add in an actor. Let's make it. Let's call it the item class. It's going to be F-type actor. So again, right-click, new C++ class, click actor, click next, then change this to item. and click create class. I want to do two things this time instead of me going back and forth from C++ to Unreal Engine. We can just, if we know we're going to make a couple of classes, we might as well do them now. Okay. And then we wait for the patch to happen, which will happen in a second. And once we have a green light, which is going to happen right now, there it is, then we can close this window off and we can call, kind of click file, save all, and close off the editor, right? What we want to do now is I want to do a couple things. First, reload everything in Visual Studio, where the reload button allows us to do that. But what I want to do is I want you guys to do this too. I want you to remove all the boilerplate comments and all that stuff. So first, let's close off main character. We don't need that right now. We've already worked with that. I want to work with my interactable interface, and I just want to get rid of the boilerplate comments. So comment that out or cut that out. One day when it feels like letting me. Still updating. And again, it's click, click, click. So 3 clicks and delete. Right? Click, click, click. 3 clicks and delete. Click, click, click. Okay. Same thing with the item.h. What I also want to do is consolidate the public area in the item class. Item.h has 2 public areas. I don't like that, like I told you before. So I'm going to kind of take this, cut it, and put it under here. Okay, so we have both those 2 things together. And then this way we have our stuff that looks like this. I'm going to save all. And then I want to go back to the interactable interface.h and I want to talk about it. So one thing to notice about interfaces is that there are actually 2 classes. This is kind of like the inner class, and this is kind of like the outer class, okay, in many ways. Our actual class is called interactable interface, I for interface. Okay, that's what normally we do. And actually this is a standard naming convention across many languages when we start the interface with I, like IEnumerable, as an example. So interactable is what we've made, pretty much, okay? We also have this U interface, and by default, we have something called minimal API, but we want to make something, want to use something called blueprintable. And I want to talk about this. Blueprintable, right, is another specifier that really allows us to create, to use this interface in blueprints to create classes. So we need to use this option as well. So blueprintable is the first thing we want to add, save. And that's what we've got here. That's the only thing we've done here. Okay. Next, what I want to do is in the public section, I want to add in our special function, which is the interact function here. So copy that. We're in page 38. So back in the public section in the interface, we're going to copy this in. Let's take a look at this for a second. It says, okay, one thing is it asks us to add in a reference to character. Well, we don't want to include character in here. It's pretty big. We want to forward declare. So again, ReSharper allows me to forward declare. There we go. We can actually add in forward declarations. There we go. So we know that that's the case. In this case, we're never going to keep our promise with the interface. The interface is basically declaring it, but we're going to, add in a reference to main character where we need to inside of the implementing classes. All right, so that's something that we're going to do. Let me go over this with you. U function blueprint native event. What this specifier basically says is that you're going to have part of this class is working only in blueprints. So blueprint native event means that, it must be overwritten. It's designed to be overwritten inside of a blueprint, not here, okay? Blueprint callable, we know what that is. It allows us to use the object in blueprints. Category interaction, and then here meta display name. Anytime we see display name as something else, we can change the name of the function we're going to get to make it interact. Notice the blueprint native event says that it has a default native implementation, and then but with the underscore implementation added to the end, which is where code should be written. We don't need to use that underscore implementation here. We're just going to use this in blueprints, and that's why we set it up the way we did. Okay, so notice that there is no underline here because we do not define the function at all in the CPP. We only do it here. We only declare the function for interfaces in the .h. Okay, next, I want to skip now to the item class. Let's close off the interface. And before we do that, before we do more work in the item class, let's put this up on DevOps. So again, view, terminal. I want to say something like git at dot, git commits -m. We'll say added interactable interface. Okay, so we did. And we probably won't go back to that interface again. It's just one time. Once we've made the interface, now we use it in item. So in item, going back to this, what we want to do is do a couple things. One, some forward declarations are right here. So we'll kind of put those at the top. So we're going to use some of these classes, right? And the other thing is we're going to implement our new interactable interface. The way to do that is put a comma after the inherited class. Our inherited class is a actor, right? That's what it stands for, right? And we're going to say that we're going to inherit a public, must be public there, I interactable interface, this one. And if I press enter, then depending on your Visual Studio and how you have it set up, it may automatically include the interface here. Including the interface here is okay, all right? Because again, it's very lightweight, and what it's doing is it's just telling us that we now need to implement the interact function somewhere, whether it's in code here or in the blueprint for us to use items. That's what it means. Okay, we must override. This right now does not implement the interactable interface other than just this line right here. And why? Because what we actually want to do is we want to make it so that we can declare that interact function in blueprints. Now, I want to also mention one thing. This is not truly, although we're making use of an interface, right? As an example, C++ does things slightly differently. And here, what they've done is a different version, a different way of doing interfaces with Unreal Engine that is not the same as how we're doing things in raw C++. So interfaces be declared slightly differently, but the exact kind of similar idea, all right? So that's the first part. Next, once we've got the interface defined here, the next part is adding in some components because we want to build up our item a little differently. So I'm going to grab these components and go back to the public area here, right? Yeah. So let's take a look at this. Scene component, that's here. Sphere component, that's here. Skeletal mesh component, that's here. And these three components is what we're going to configure manually. So instead of the user configuring stuff in blueprints or someone else, an artist, we're going to configure it as developers, and the artist can use what we've developed in blueprints, just like we did the camera last time and the spring arm. It's like kind of a similar idea. Next, what we want to do now is at the end of near the protected section, I want to add in two overlap functions. Let's talk about these for a second. That's in here in the protected section in the same place where we have begin play. So there's two overlap functions. One of them is the on sphere overlap event. Both of them are blueprint callable, so we can use them if we want to specifically. They take in the on sphere overlap takes in an overlapped component. That's a primitive component, and that's related to the thing that we're using, in our case, a sphere, right? This interact radius. right? The next part is the other actor, the thing that you are overlapping with, right? And then the other actor's component. Maybe there's another something else that you're interacting with that the other actor has, right? Attach them. Could be another sphere or something. The other body index, which is the number related to that other thing that you're colliding with. Are you using a sweep, as an example? And we'll talk about that in a second. And the sweep result. So sweeps, let's talk about this. Imagine if I've got a bullet and I'm firing the bullet from my, a gun, and the bullet leaves and it's going to penetrate a wall. And I want to detect collisions, and by the time that the bullet leaves, so that as it penetrates, I get the collision detection. The problem is when we start coding this ourselves, right? If I check every frame, and if the bullet is fast enough, and let's say the wall is yay thick, I check here at the beginning, right? And then the next frame, I'm through the wall and I check over here. So it looks like the bullet has penetrated the wall and gone right through, no checks. Because I'm checking here and here, and the bullet's moving very quickly. So one way to fix this problem is to use something called a sweep, right? And what that is I project in front of the bullet another shape that kind of predicts if the bullet is going to hit an object with its current velocity. That's what it does, right? And that's kind of what we're doing here. We're basically saying that, hey, you know what, we want to project out, and it's going to use a sweep so that we can pre-calculate or compute if an object is going to somehow overlap with the thing that we're using, this interact sphere. Okay? Notice that there is no sweep on the outbound. So one is overlap. The other one is when we end the overlap. Okay. So these are really useful because if a character moves into the area where there's an item, I want to know if I'm close enough to the item. And if I leave the area of an item, then I'm too far. I can't use my interaction key to do that. Okay, let's set these up. So I'm gonna go up here, click on the little hammer and define these two things. There we go. And what I want to do now is inside of the CPP file, let's add in the includes to secure our contract, because we made a contract with 4 declarations and we want to keep our promise right here by putting these includes up here. Okay. And then inside of the constructor function, we want to add in all of these components. So we kind of define and configure the components right in here. Let's talk about this a little bit. So first thing is we define our default scene route. Now we don't really need this. If you really want to make interact radius the scene route, you could say interact radius, create default subobject of type U sphere component, and then you can use this, that root component, to interact radius. But the problem with this is for the item is we don't want the interact radius there after we pick up the item. So if the item's in front of us and I'll go and pick it up, I want that interact radius to disappear. But I can't make it disappear if it's the root component. That means the item mesh will also disappear. I don't want that. That's why I'm making them 2 separate components that are unrelated that are connected to a default scene root component. That's why I made it this way, okay? So that's kind of how this works. It kind of create default subobject. If you remember what we did last week, we talked about this as equivalent to instantiate in Unity. And then we set up the attachment. We can connect it to a parent object, okay? Here in item mesh, we're also configuring the type of collision response that we want. There is no collision response that we have here for interact radius, as it's a default overlap sphere. That's what we have, okay? But when it comes to the item mesh, we want to ignore first all channels and then set up the visibility channel to block, right? That's what we want to do. We also want to use the type of collision we want is just query only. We don't want the sword to push things around. So there's no physics involved in the sword. It's just a query that we're going to use, okay? So for collision, a trigger collision equivalent in Unity, okay? So save all, that's the first part. That's the constructor function. Next, remember the constructor function triggers when an object is instantiated for the first time. I want to use the begin play, and inside the begin play, this is where we're going to set up our binding between the interact radius and the 2 callback functions Okay, so again, we can see that the interact radius has built-in methods called onComponentBegin overlap and onComponentEnd overlap. We can use the add dynamic method of those methods to bind between this, which is our object, my item, and the onSphere overlap function. This is the callback function. So what we're saying is, when I want to hook up the onComponentBegin overlap to use the onSphere overlap function we define. And same thing goes for the onComponentEnd overlap. We're going to use the onSphereEnd overlap. And it's based on the interact radius. Okay, there we go. Next, I want to define simple values right now, simple checks inside of these two overlap functions. One of them is if the other actor is not equal to this, so I'm not overlapping with myself as an item, then I want to output overlap with and whatever the other actor's name is. Okay. The other option is when I'm done overlapping, and if I left that area, I want to be able to see that I've moved away. So again, this is like if the other actor that I'm overlapping with is not me, then I want to say something like ended overlap with whatever the actor is that moved out of the area. Okay. And this is the first version of my overlap for my item. Okay, cool. So we have some stuff to set up now. Our item is first version. Let's put this up on, before we put it up on GitHub, we have to test it, or DevOps, we have to test it. So let's do Control F5, and let's launch the editor again one more time. Okay, we got build errors. Let's take a look at these build errors and see what they are. Sometimes we get these, and I don't want you to freak out, or whatever, but they definitely have some things related to our classes and stuff like that that we missed, okay? And I want to talk about these things, right, so that we're clear, right? So one thing is that if we go to the top here, we have these components. We talked about scene, sphere, and skeletal mesh component. That's what we did here, right? And then we have a U primitive component, an actor, another component, and all this kind of stuff. So we're good here. We have our text and this other stuff here, and everything else looks pretty good. Again, I'm not sure why it would crap out. Make sure that everything is saved, because there should be no reason that this would crap out at all. Let's try that one more time. That's weird that it did crapped out. And I want to see that error one more time. Maybe I forgot something. What does it say? Did you guys crap out as well? So it's not there. It has to do with the ones we can control. Events, child, something that we didn't include. Okay, interact interface CPP. It got removed by mistake. So that is an issue. That's what the problem was. Somehow the include got it removed. We're not even using the interactable interface.cpp. We can close this down. That was just by accident. That was a kind of typo. Okay, let's try that again. Control F5. Okay, it looks like mine succeeded now. That's good, Alex. All right, so now we're back up. And what we want to do now, I'm just going to close this off, is the next piece, which is now that we have that, we want to remove, we're going to update the item, the base weapon class, right? Base weapon, BP underscore base weapon. But to do that, I want to remove the instances that we already have. And we can do that by going into the little house over here that I made and going over to these items. And let's remove those items. So again, if you kind of scroll down in the outliner to where it says weapons, I can just select those 3 weapons and then delete to delete them, right? And the reason why we're deleting them is because we're going to make changes to them, and because we're going to kind of override the base weapon class. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so compile and save, or save, sorry. And let's go back to the next piece, which is I want to open up base weapon. So let's go do that. So back to this. So again, it's blueprints, items, weapons, double click on base weapon, BP underscore base weapon. And this is the class. I don't need any of this. We can get rid of all that stuff. There's no need for that. And we have a skeletal mesh that I used to kind of create all the weapons for you. What I want to do now is I want to remove this skeletal mesh. So press delete, right? So otherwise it's going to be just useless. We're not going to use it. And I want to go to the class settings and I want to select item because that is the new thing. We just made an item and that item is going to give us the stuff that we need. We have an item mesh here and an interact radius here. Okay, so let's do some configuration. For the interact radius, I want to make the line thickness 2 by default. And I also want to make it for testing purposes. Let's make it so that the interact radius is not hidden. So if I click on hidden, I want to uncheck hidden in game so I can see the interact radius when we're interacting with an item for now. Okay, so compile and save. This is the first part. Okay, so this is your base weapon so far. Next, now that I've modified base weapon, what I want to do is I want to modify the sword. So I want to double click on sword. You can see that the sword now also has the same thing we had before. Let's keep all this though this time. Item mesh, we want to change the item mesh so that the item mesh of the sword is the SK_sword. This is the item mesh for it. If I look at the viewport, you can see that the sword looks like this. Let me just change the speed of the camera here so we can work with it a little bit more. And it's kind of upside down, so it's kind of pointing down, and the radius is weird. So just like it says here, what I want to do is I'm going to change the y-axis by 180 degrees. So again, rotate on the y-axis by 180. There we go. So now it's pointing up the sword. And the next part that I want to change is the interact radius should be 70. So again, I'm choosing the interact radius and I'm going to change the sphere radius to 70. There we go. The sword's a little bit too high. Let's click back on the sword and let's use the z-axis and move this down to -50. And you can see now, nicely, the sword is inside of the sphere radius. And compile and save. There we go. So there is our first item. It's a sword. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to drag a version of the sword right now into our game world. So again, I'm back out here. Let's drag in the sword and I'm going to put it here. I don't want you to put it too high up, kind of something that looks like this for now. And to test this, I'm just going to run the code. It should be something where if I run the character in, it shouldn't be that high up. It should be something that looks like this. Okay, for now. So I can kind of pick up the sword if I need to. All right, that's what it's going to be for now. Okay. So that is the sword. So compile and save. Or sorry, just save, and then we just ran already, so it's pretty good. What I want to do now is I want to test to see if I get these interactions, if the overlap works. Let's try this out. So again, I need to see the output log, and I'm going to go here to settings, and I'm going to go clear on pi, which means every single time we run this thing, it'll clear the screen. So I want to run it, and let's see if we get that interaction. So again, if I run towards the object, and if I move inside of its radius, look, I'm overlapping with main character. If I move away, and it overlap with main character. And if I move back and forth, you can see that that is working okay. Okay, that's this stuff right here that I'm talking about. So we're pretty good so far. So that we know that this all works. Okay, that's important. Let's also close now. So file, save all, and close the Unreal Editor. And let's continue on with more C++. So back to the item class, now that we've checked it out. We know that it works, the stuff that we've added in. I want to add a reference to main character. That's a for declaration in the item class to main character. There it is. Okay. And then what I want to do is kind of in the public section here, I want to add in two things in the main character. One of them, again, right underneath the tick function here, I'll put them right here exactly where these are. There's two, and one of them is a B actor interactor is within radius. That's in the item. And the other one is character. Okay, so two things here. One thing is it starts with the B lowercase. This is a standard when it comes to Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine would like you to define all Boolean variables with a lowercase b followed by the variable name. Okay, now the lowercase b will go away when it comes into blueprints. We won't see the B, right? But that's how we define, Booleans. If you don't want to, you can still just put the regular name, but this helps Unreal Engine, believe it or not, understand the type of variable that it is. And so that's why we want to use the lowercase b. The other stuff is that we have a reference to a main character called character, and we're going to use these to keep track of what is interacting with the item. That's what we're going to do. Okay, next. What I want to do is back inside of the .cpp, I want to grab this. So again, I'm adding in a reference to an include here for the main character. So I'm going to rearrange those. And the next piece that I want to add in is I want to change up what it had before inside of my overlap function. So the first overlap function looks like this. And that's just down in here. So I want to change up all the stuff that's inside. So no more UE log. I don't care about that anymore. And so that means that, okay, so try and cast my character. By the way, in your PowerPoint, it has 2 equal signs here. It's incorrect. It's got to be 1 equal sign. So please correct your PowerPoint or correct this. It's not 2 equal signs. It's not equal, it's just 1 equal. That was a syntax problem when I copy pasted it. Okay, so please don't use equal. It'll fail. So that's one thing. The other one is this part. Okay, so this is new. And this is going to replace the stuff that's in here. Now, again, in your version of the thing, I've corrected it since this morning, but you are missing item mesh this. So I'm going to give you these 2 functions. Here's the first function. Just maybe the body. Just the body of the first function on sphere overlap. So just replace what's inside the body now. It's the first one. And I put it in your chat. And this is the body of the second one. You put that in your chat as well. So you have those 2. Okay, so the first one is on sphere overlap. Second one is on sphere end overlap. Please use what I've just typed. I've got in there. So this way it works. Let me talk about the thing that's happening here. So first, I have my character, which I just defined, character being of type main character pointer. And I'm saying, well, let's try and cast the other actor, the thing that we're overlapping with, as a character. If you're successful, if that's true, then let's say that the B interactor is within radius. So the character is the interactor we want to care about. And if the character overlaps with this thing, with the sphere, then this is true. Okay, that's just checkbox. The other one is if I leave. If I leave, then there's 2 parts here. The character is null pointer, so I kind of get rid of the reference to the character. And the B interactor is within radius is now false. I have this other thing in here. And what this is set render custom depth. And I'm using this right here for, and what this does is it disables, the item highlights, which is really an outline. Okay, what I've done for you guys, and again, I haven't gone through all the stuff I've added into this project, but one thing that I've added in for you is a way to outline items when you're interacting with them. For example, the game that I'm playing right now, when I can, Outer Worlds 2, it has a blue outline when you have items that you can pick up. And then when there's an item that you're going to steal, it's red, right? It just outlines the entire item in red, telling you that, hey, man, you touch this thing, you're stealing. Are you okay with that? Steal away, right? Kind of thing. Our outline is going to be yellow by default, but you can change this, and I will show you how to do that, going forward. Okay. So here, when I leave the overlap, I definitely want the outline to turn off if I'm pointing at the item. Okay, so that's what I want to do. That's why I have to put this here. Save. Next, in the main character.h again, I want to go into the public section and add in a reference to the interactable actor. Now this is in the main character. So right now I'm in item. Let's open up the main character.h. Main character.h, here it is. And then in the public section somewhere, that could be at the bottom, right? I think I'll put it at the bottom for now. Here it is. I want to put in this new interaction property called interactable actor. So what this is going to do is I want to try and keep track of the thing that I'm interacting with, whether it's a door, a sword, whatever. I want to know what it is. And I can do that here in my main character.h. Okay, it's in the public section, which means that, did I put it in public or protected? It should be in public, not protected. I put it in the protected section by accident. Sorry about that. I meant to put it up here. So this way I can see this. Yeah, it's fine. I'll leave that open there. Later on. So that's what this is. In the public section, it's right here underneath the stop jumping function. And I also want to, at the bottom of the private section, I want to add a new function called perform sphere trace. Let's do that. So all the way at the bottom, let's get rid of some of these extra spaces I added in at the bottom. Let's add in perform sphere trace. Perform sphere trace, let's add that in, generate the definition for us right away. So it's there waiting for us to fill out. It's empty right now. I'm going to go back to the .h for a second because we don't have to do this right now. And so all I've done is I've added the perform sphere trace and I've defined an empty function for it in the CPP. Next, what I want to do is in the CPP, I want to add in the Kismet system library, this one, okay? So I want to talk about this. Kismet is, I talked about this last week. It's an old library that's been around for a long, long time. And what it is the Kismet system library includes a lot of helper functions, static functions that we can use. One of those is like the trace functions. They're all in there as well. Okay, so that's the Kismet system library. What I want to do is I want to call the perform sphere trace every frame. Okay, so talk about that. So copy that. And then go into the tick function of the character and kind of call the perform sphere trace. So I want you to think about what I'm going to do. I'm going to cast out a capsule in front of the character. When the capsule is interacting with or overlapping with the item, it's going to tell for us, it's going to give us information what item we're interacting with, whether it's a wall, a floor, a door, what are we interacting with? And then what's going to happen is it's going to give us information that is it an item that I can interact with? If it's an interactable item, it'll allow me to use my E key to interact with it. If it's not an interactable item, it won't allow me to do that. If it's an interactable item, it's going to highlight. If it's not an interactable item, it won't do anything. Okay? So that's kind of something that I want to do. All right, so that is the tick function. And now this big ugly perform sphere trace. Now I could have hand bombed this, but again, just from a time perspective, I'm just going to copy paste it and I'm going to explain it instead. Okay. Notice there are some red areas. These is because we haven't included the interactable interface. Let's add that in. And we also haven't added in the item.h. Let's add that in. So now at the top of your CPP, you should see the following interactable interface and item.h are now included just underneath the enhanced input system and enhanced input component. Okay, they got added in automatically just now. Let's go through this thing to explain how it works. Okay, so you guys are clear. So first, we kind of define a hit result. A hit result kind of holds information about the type of things we're hitting with our dynamically created sphere. We're making a dynamically created sphere that we're going to cast out in front of the character. That's what we're doing, okay? We're also creating a set of query parameters, all right? So first we declare an object of type query parameters. That's what it is, F collision query params. And what we're doing is we're configuring this. We're saying that I want to say that the query params were trace complex is true. And I'm also saying that I'm going to ignore add an ignore actor, which is this. So I'm going to ignore the item itself, or the character itself, right? We're also defining a sphere radius of 25 and the start location. So the start location is where this sphere trace is going to start from. It's going to start from the location of the character. That's kind of wherever the anchor point is of the character itself. That's where the sphere trace is going to start. Now you can start this higher up if you want to start at the head, or if you want to start at the chest, whatever you want. But for now, it's kind of low, like near the middle of the character, all right? Plus the forward vector, so wherever the character's looking, times 50 units, which is centimeters. So it's not inside the character where the sphere trace is starting, it's just outside the character in front of them, okay, 50 units. The end location is going to use the start location start from there, plus the forward vector again, times 200. So in front of the character, 200 centimeters in front, that's this sphere trace that we're going to make. Here is the actual sphere trace itself. Now, this is like this because I wanted to make it fit on the PowerPoint slide. Notice the PowerPoint slide has like something that looks like this. But the better way to display this, in my opinion, is to kind of put it like this. So just add some, kind of spaces here, or enter, 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 just like after the commas. Because this way you can kind of look at all the parameters that we're adding in to make sure that we're not missing any parameter. Okay, that's what this does. I like doing it this way first. And then if we need to compress it for a PowerPoint or something, we can do that, which is what I did. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So we're using the Kismet system library to call a static member. Notice it says static bool. That means we don't have to instantiate an object of type Kismet system library. We're just using a static function from that library. And then what we're doing is we're saying, okay, so I'm using sphere trace single. It needs a world context object. We're giving it get world. Get world is giving you the information about the global coordinate system and the type of world that we've created, the level information, a bunch of other stuff. Next part is we're passing it in a start vector. That's the start location we talked about, and an end vector, right, which is the end location we talked about. So start and end. We're also talking about the radius. So the radius we've defined as 25 units, so 25 centimeter radius, right? And then, of course, we're passing in a reference to the e-trace type query. So what channel are you tracing? Well, typically when we do any kind of casting, kind of like with ray tracing and stuff like that, or ray casting, we're using the visibility channel. You can use any channel you want, by the way. But here we're using the visibility channel. So that's the one we want to collide with. That's the one we have to make sure that the thing that's receiving the sphere is blocking. If you ignore this channel, the visibility channel in this case, this sphere trace will not do anything. Okay. Next, are we tracing complex? Yes. Actors to ignore. We have an empty array of actors to ignore. I can include other actors. Let's say, for example, I don't want to collide with, or we want to ignore a slew of different things, like let's say body parts that I don't want to interact with or whatever. Or we can also make it a dynamic list of things that, the character just can't interact with because of different reasons in the game, right? The draw debug trace is, am I going to draw something that you can see from a debugging perspective? For now, we're going to use for one frame. Because we're calling the perform sphere trace every frame, this is okay, because it's going to basically create the new sphere trace. It's going to redraw it every frame, right? So it's going to be more dynamic that way. It's going to save whatever we hit inside of hit result, like I mentioned earlier. So this is where it's going to save all the information. And of course, we're saying, please ignore yourself, right? That's what's happening here. Okay, so this is pretty good. This is what it looks like. And if I scroll down here, this is the first part, okay? The next part is actor, right? So I'm making the hit actor based on the hit result. Again, the stuff where we're storing all the information, the actor that we're hitting with the hit result. Okay, that's the hit actor. Now here's the big check. If is hit is true, because remember, sphere trace single says, do I have a hit or not? It returns a Boolean. If I'm hitting something, that's what this means, and the thing I'm hitting implements the interactable interface, in this case, it's some kind of item, right? Hopefully. Then I want to draw a debug sphere that's magenta in color, that has the same radius as my sphere cast, right? And uses the impact point as the place where I'm going to draw it, right? This is where it is. So again, draw a debug sphere has the world and the center. The center is where I'm hitting, wherever my my sphere trace is hitting. The center of that place, that's where that sphere, that thing is going to be drawn, okay? Again, later on, we'll turn this off. This is just for us trying to troubleshoot if everything is working properly, right? I want to set the interactable actor of the main character now to the hit actor. So this is where I make that connection. And then I say something like this. Can I cast the interactable actor, whatever I'm connecting with that item, as an item? Is it an item or is it some other interactable actor? If it's an item, we're good. Then set the item's interactor is within radius if also if I'm within radius, so there's two parts. Is it an item? Yes. And is the actor close enough? Is this guy close enough? If it's true, so check if the main character is within the interaction radius of the item. That's the first thing. And if that's true, then enable the highlight, the item highlight, which is the outline. So this is the enables the outline when I'm looking at this, the object. I have to be looking at it because my sphere trace is in the forward direction, wherever the forward direction is of the character. So if I'm looking away from it, it's not going to highlight, even if I'm within the radius, my interaction radius. This makes it so there's two checks that are done. Am I close enough? That's the interaction radius. And am I looking at the item? If I'm looking at the item and I'm close enough, then I can interact with it, and no other time, right? All right. Otherwise, if this fails, so I don't have a hit, or if the thing that I'm interacting with is not of type interactable interface, then the interactable actor is null pointer. Okay. So that means if I move away also every frame, then I'm not interacting with anything. Then therefore, I'm going to clear the interactable actor, which means I'm not going to do any of this stuff. Save. Okay. Last thing we want to do in our item CPP, if I go back to the item CPP, then inside the tick function now, right, of the item this time, I'm going to say that if my character, let's talk about this, if I have a character, so character is live, but the character does not have an interactable actor, again, this means that I'm not looking at the interactable actor, then again, this is another check to make sure that the custom depth is false, which means I'm not going to end the highlight. So this is going to be like disables the item highlight outline. And this is more of a check of if the character is no longer valid, as an example, it's not really true. It's if the character is not looking, we'll say looking at the item, then that's what this is going to be done, right? Okay, so disable the outline. If I'm not looking at the item anymore, right? So we can also say, just to make sure, check if the character is not looking at the item anymore. And if it's true, then disable the outline. Okay, so that's it. Let's use Control F5 and let's check this out, see what happens. Again, I know there's a lot of detail here, but I'm trying to give you a set of interaction tools that you can use with your game, right? So you don't have to necessarily use my outline or anything else like that, but if you're actually doing any kind of pickup, any interaction with the door or any common items that you might see in the game world, then this is not a bad way to do it. Okay, so it's like, again, it's we're going to use something similar next semester when we talk about multiplayer. In multiplayer, we'll be opening doors and doing a bunch of other things, and we'll use something similar to this that you're seeing right now. Might be eerily similar, in fact. How about identical? But we'll see. Okay, so as soon as this is done, and then we'll pull it up. I love how this takes long sometimes for no reason. All right, so now that we've loaded this up, I'm going to wait for a second while this is doing its business. There it is. So here's how it works. Now I'm casting this thing in front of me. This is a capsule. And why? Because I'm starting off a sphere trace from 50 centimeters. I'm just going to kind of get out of here so you can see it. So it's kind of doing a sphere cast from in front of the character, right? Kind of in front near there at the bottom. You know, in front of them like this. Okay, this is where the interaction happens. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's pretty low, okay? It's pretty darn low. Nicely, it would be if the interaction was higher up, right? Or even bigger, somehow. But for now, it's really low. And so I get tripped up with this earlier today, but it was like, it's not working. Well, it's not working because it's too low. And then what I want to do is, let's go back to this. I want to move towards the item. And then what happens is you can see that as I approach the item, it kind of makes that magenta sphere. If I move over here, it also makes a sphere, but it's just or it kind of changed the color, interaction color to green. And that's basically saying, hey, I'm interacting with something, or I'm colliding with something, but it's not what you're looking for, right? That's what this is. So it's not telling me what it is. It's not of type interactable, but this is. So this is the first part, okay? If I come closer, then what we're hoping is it kind of highlights like this. Notice the highlight, okay? How does the highlight work? I want to talk about this a second. Well, I've included a couple things for you here. So if you look at the content browsing, go to Assets, and if you go to Effects, and there's a highlight effect, there's a couple of materials I've added. One is more of a complex material, which is a post-processed material. It kind of looks like this. Okay, so instead of you having to code this yourself, I kind of added it for you. And then it also comes with a material instance. The material instance is cool in that it has a couple of global parameters. One of them is the fall off. You can change the way the highlight looks, the width of the highlight if you want to make it much thicker, right? The glow intensity, how much it glows if you want to make it really, really bright, and the highlight color. So you can always change these values dynamically on the fly. So if you want to, the default is yellow, but if it's an item that is, as an example, something that you can't pick up right now, you can make it red, or you can warn a person, as an example, that it's a red thing, not a yellow thing, okay? So color is really important in games. So that's what this is. So first of all, we have this material MI highlight, material instance highlight material. How does it work? Well, it needs a post-process volume. So here's the post-process volume I've already added in. The post-process volume actually spans the entire world because it has infinite extent checked, which means that even though I've put the post-process volume in the center of the game world, it actually expands to fit everything in the game. Okay, now you don't have to do it this way if you want certain areas that are available. From a performance perspective, this does kill performance if you're doing a lot of bloom and different kinds of other effects. But for our purposes, it's pretty good. Then what you want to do here is inside the post-processing volume, there is a material that we can change. So if you kind of, kind of scroll down, there is something called post-process materials. If I open that up, you can see that I've added one element to an array of materials, and one of them is this MI highlight. Okay, so that's what it works. So the MI highlight, that material, is already in the post-processing volume, which spans the entire world. To activate it on any object, all you need to do is, let's just use another object as an example, instead of the sword. If I highlight any object, any one, like this one as an example, and I want the highlight to appear on this object, if I scroll down, if I actually type in custom, you'll see that there is a render custom depth pass. Render custom depth path. If I check this on, then it highlights. Okay, that's what it is. Now, one thing to note is when it's highlighted, you can see it right through the walls. So if I go here, there it is. Okay, now this is positive and negative. You may not want this effect. And there's other shaders out there that will do the highlight in different ways. I've chosen this one. Okay, so again, you can highlight any number of objects, as an example, right? So I can add in the highlight to a bunch of objects like this, right? As an example, or I can add the highlight to other bigger objects like this, right? Where I want to highlight that entire section. You can see that works there too, right? So any object, even the floor, will highlight, okay? This highlight right here. So here it is, like whole floor is highlighted now. You can't see it, but you can see that that floor is now highlighted, okay? Any object. Why this is good. It gives feedback for the user, right? You can use it to define enemies or to find enemies in radar and a bunch of other stuff. I'm giving it to you. I recommend using something like it when it comes to feedback for your player. when they're interacting with an object. And that's what we've done here. So when we're playing, as I move closer, as long as the object is at the right level, like this morning I was like, it's not working. It wasn't working because it was too high up, right? So that's one thing that you can do. Once I come closer, this is how it works. I can come closer, I can interact with the item, right? But if I look away, even if I'm close enough, if I look away, I can't interact with it. If I look here, I can interact with it. This is where I can do the interaction. I can't do it here, and I can't do it out here. So here, it's clear that this item is ready to be interacted with, but it's not interacted with here, okay? Because it's not highlighted. Kind of cool? So that's what we're talking about here. Questions around the highlight and how you can use it? Yes, you can, Alex, no problem. Make sure that a couple things to note. Make sure Unreal Engine's closed. Make sure, look at the errors you're getting, because the errors you're getting are going to be telling you why it's not allowing you to build. If it's something related to item or main character, it'll be near the bottom of the error list. If it's something else, some other extraneous classes that you don't care about, it's not those. It's something you've done with your code, and it'll tell you, zero in on what the problem is. Okay, so pretty cool. So we've done this piece right here, and Logan's got some stuff. Let's take a look at your stuff, Logan, for a second before I move on. We have a lot to cover, and I got to move on, but we're almost at the well, I would say we're at about the halfway mark, right? And we still have an hour left. So bear with me while I do this. I'm going to bring up Logan's image here, and it says, "You interactable interface." Yeah. So what you need to do is you need to add these includes at the top. Okay. So what I did for these is, and I did it automatically, right? I went into the and so the reason why mine doesn't show up is because I kind of added these two includes right here. So add those two includes, and that's what will help. Try adding those two includes at the top. Okay. And that'll solve that problem. And if some of you guys are having that problem, I just added them in automatically. When Visual Studio prompted me, I added them in. Okay, that's what I did. Okay. Hopefully that helps you, Logan. Okay, so this is great. We have everything we need at this point. It kind of shows us this stuff. This is a great place to put it up on DevOps. So again, back to here, I'm going to go to View Terminal, and I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m, weird when it does that, added interactions with highlight. We'll say added item interaction with highlight. Okay. Did that help, Logan? Hopefully it did. Good. All right, so now that we have that going, I want to talk about item pickup. This is the first real interaction. Now that we're able to know we're interacting with an item, I want to be able to do the interaction, like the item pickup with the E button. How do we do this? Let's close off our editor. So File, Save All, close off the editor, right? And then what we want to do is go into the interact function. So back, let's set up our main character so that when we interact with when the interact action is triggered, we call the interactable interfaces interact function. So again, this is main character, right? We have, if you notice here, we have, if I go to scope here, if I want to go to a particular function, if it has global scope at the top, I can select main character, and then all the functions will be here where I can jump to these functions. One of them is the interact function, this one, and I can jump to it like this. Kind of cool, right? You can also find, the function too. But here's the interact function. And so inside the interact function, what I want to do is I want to check to see if I have an interactable actor. That means I'm overlapping like that. So now it's highlighted as an example. So the actor is highlighted. if the actor that is highlighted is an item, again, another further check, we know it is, but if it is an item, then let's do this. If the item, a further check, has the is within radius, if my user is, I'm interacting with an item and I'm close enough, that's what this is. So I have an interactable actor, the interactable actor is an item, and I'm close enough, that's what these three checks do, right? Then execute the interact function on the item, whatever that interact function is, okay? The interact function hasn't been configured yet. We haven't done that, okay? So it won't do anything right now, but we will do it. Notice it says execute interact. Execute underscore gets added to the name of the function we declared inside of my interface, okay? That's what it does. Next, what I want to do now is I want to kind of add in three new enums. The first one is called item state. Let's put them in. Okay, this is going to help us with interaction. So again, to add an enum, I'm going to right click on my TPP starter project, add new item. It's going to be of type .h, header, and I want to rename it to item state.h. Make sure the dot is there. But this is the wrong path. It's taking us into some other intermediate project files. I want to browse, and I want to go into ICE8. You've done this before, source, TPP starter project, and click select folder. This is the right location now, okay? And now I can click add. When I do, I'm prompted with pragma once, which is good, and I want to put in the rest of the code right here, okay, this part right here. Let me explain what this one does. So the item state, right, basically has two states right now. There's one is hovering, which is what we're seeing right now. Now, right now it's not hovering, but next week we're going to make it hover, okay? And the other one is equipped. Equipped means it's not hovering anymore. If it's not hovering anymore, I don't want the interact radius to be around anymore. So these are the two item states. Let's add that in to DevOps. So again, terminal, git add dot, git commit -m, we'll say added item state enum. Okay, there we go. I won't push it yet. Next, let's add in the next one. The next one is the character state enum. Same idea, right click, add new item, .h type. We're going to replace this by the name. It's already in the right position. We only have to do this once. We don't have to check again. Press add. It's giving me pragma once. I'm going to type in the rest of the stuff right here. And if I do that, I get this. So character state, there are three character states. Either I'm unequipped, or I either have a one-handed weapon or a two-handed weapon. We never have a two-handed weapon yet. We may have one maybe at the end of this semester or next semester, because we're going to continue doing some stuff with this project. Okay, so here he is, one-handed weapon. That's what we're looking for. Either it's unequipped or have an equipped one-handed weapon. You can also have equipped two-handed weapon, or maybe there's an equipped shield. There might be other equipped states. What kind of thing do I have equipped? That's what this is. Save. Okay, let's put this view terminal. I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say added character state enum. Second thing I'm adding. Okay, third thing, which is the action state. So action state, and you might be confused, but we'll talk about all this, and hopefully you get all these. New item. Again, header file, we'll call this header action state in the same location that we had it before. This is good. And this time we'll add in all of these, more states. Let me explain these ones. So either I'm unoccupied, that means the character is not doing something. I'm going through a hit reaction. I've been hit by an enemy that's coming, by the way. I'm attacking, I'm in the process of attacking, or equipping a weapon, or I'm dodging, or I'm dead. Those are different states that I can have. And where I want it to be is the only time that I can do something else is when I'm unoccupied. If I have one of these other states, if I'm hit reacting, or I'm attacking, or equipping, or dodging, or I'm dead, right? I shouldn't be able to move. I shouldn't be able to attack. I shouldn't be able to equip if I'm already doing something. I don't want to be able to do one of these where I'm, shifting between one type of action and the other. This is bad, right? So that's why I'm preventing this from happening with this action state. Okay. Okay, good. Let's add that in. View terminal. So I'll say git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say added action state enum. There we go. Let's push that up. So I'm pushing 3 commits at once instead of doing push, push, push. I'm just doing 1 push. There we go. Next, now that we have that, let's add the item state to the item class. So again, in item.h, in the public section. So public section, we'll go back to the bottom over here, doesn't matter where. We'll add in an item state. Notice that I'm getting this red mark. This is where you had problems, Logan and I guess Alex. It says, I don't know what item state is. Do you want to add it? This is what my Visual Studio is prompting me to do. If yours is not prompting you, it just means that you need to add in item state.h. Okay. Now you would be, you might think you might want to forward declare this, but item state.h is a little enum. It doesn't take a lot, and it's okay if you include it as an include. Okay. It's not going to kill anybody, right? It's not going to set the world on fire like my partner likes to say. Okay. So just put it here, item state.h. This allows me to keep track of my item state. My item state by default is hovering. So just like sitting in the middle of our world. That's what this does, okay? Save. Next, what I want to do is I want to, in the same item class in the .h, let's add in the public section, a little interaction function. We're going to add other ones later on. But here at the bottom of this item state, let's add in some interaction functions. This one is attach mesh to socket. So I want to add this in. I want to generate that function. There we go. Attach mesh to socket. It uses uScene component, and that's okay because we already have the uScene component declared up here. We're good. We don't have to do another forward declaration here. Okay. And in the item.cpp, let's define it. So I'm going to grab these 2 pieces here and go back to that new function that we just made here. And let's talk about how this works. So we can create attachment rules, right? And the attachment rule that I want to use is snap to target. That means when I attach a mesh to something, I want it to snap to the socket location, snap to it, rotation and everything. And I can use the item meshes attached to component method. By the way, attached to component when it comes to blueprints is called attach component to component. That's what it's called in blueprints. Here it's just called attached to component. So it's a bit of a difference. And then it says, okay, so where is it going? It's going to the uScene component, usually related to what the parent is, using transform rules, how it's going to snap, right? And the socket name, where it's going to go. Okay, that's what it does here. That's the attach mesh to socket. It's going to be a little utility function that we're going to use when we attach stuff, the item to a character. Okay, save all. In the main character, I want to add in a new property in the public section called equipped weapon. So this is a way of tracking the thing that I've equipped. So again, main character.h, going to go up to the public section underneath the interaction properties. We're going to have in the equipped weapon. Again, notice I'm getting a little thing, a warning from Visual Studio saying, how do you want to deal with this? Okay, item is a whole class. I don't want to include a whole class. I want to forward declare. So again, options here for Visual Studio for me are either add forward declaration or include the item. I want to add a forward declaration. So let's go here and add it in. So I'm going to say class, right? And then a item. And that forward declares the item. Again, with forward declaration, I'm making a promise that I'm going to include this later in the CPP. So equipped weapon is going to keep track of the weapon that I've equipped, right? And I can check to see if I have an equipped weapon. Equipped weapon means that I have something that I've picked up. In the future, if I was going to create a some kind of inventory system, this would not be sufficient. It wouldn't be sufficient, right? I'd have to have a whole inventory system of stuff, and then equipped weapon would be the thing that I have in my hand, whatever that is. Here, equipped weapon doesn't mean that. It means I have something that I've picked up in my inventory, weapon in my inventory. What that is, that's what this is, okay? Okay. And then in the private section, we're flipping back to the main character again in the private section. So way at the bottom, right, of the private section, underneath the perform sphere trace, right, I want to add in a couple of these states. Okay, now for your in-class exercise 8, you may need to move these right into the public section, and I will explain this later. But for now, notice I'm getting these little things. It's saying, do you want to include character state.h? Yes, I do. Do you want to include action state.h? Yes, I do. So I'm doing that in the .h. And again, like I said, these little enums, it's okay. I don't care about including enums. I'm good with that. All right. So instead of for declaring enums, we're just including them here at the top. They're little tiny things, right? They're nothing. Okay. All right. This is very good. So what do these two things do? So one is keeps track of a character state. So by default, character state starts off as unequipped. I don't have anything, right? And, unequipped. And then the action state starts off as unoccupied. So I'm not doing anything. I'm unequipped and I'm unoccupied. I don't have anything going on, which means that if I want to go pick up an item, I can do that. And then I'm in an equipped state, equipped one-handed weapon as an example. Okay. This is the states that we're looking at right here. Okay. Next, I want to go into the protected section of the main character and add all of these helper functions. All right. Let me talk about these for a second. So again, in the protected section, that's way up here. Okay. So let me explain all this now. So instead of me going and put these individually in, I'm just going to go at the top here, click on the main character using ReSharper to generate definitions. It's going to do all these at the same time. There we go. And I'm going to run down here to these ones. So attack end is going to keep track of when the attack ends. What do I do? Attach weapon to back. That's going to actually attach my weapon to my spine socket. Attach weapon to hand is attach weapon to my, in this case only, just for now, to my right hand socket. If I had another one, let's say attach shield to left hand, or I wanted to attach a weapon to both hands, there might be other functions I could use here too. The other one is finish equipping. Finish equipping does something. I also have these local functions that help me figure out if I can do something. They're all Boolean return functions, right? First one is can I attack, or can I disarm, or can I arm? And these are going to look at different states. We're going to mix states together and say, well, I have to be unoccupied, and I have to be, I have to have an equipped weapon. So unoccupied and equipped, then I can attack. Unoccupied and equipped, I can disarm. Unoccupied, right, and equipped, I can arm, as an example, and so on. So that's what these are going to do, okay? So let's define them. So here's an example of attack end. So let's grab this one and go to attack end in the main character CPP. So here's attack end. So when the attack ends, we are unoccupied. Doesn't say anything about whether we're equipped or not. We're unoccupied. Okay, that's when the attack is end. The next one is attach weapon to back. Okay, first of all, I have to have a weapon to attach. So I say check to see, do I have an equipped weapon? If true, then use this new function that's part of the equipped weapon that we just defined here, which is attach mesh to socket. We're using that thing. Here's attach mesh to socket, where I get the mesh for my character and use the spine socket as the place that I'm attaching it to. Okay. Attach mesh, weapon to hand, same thing, except a different location. There it is, right? So attach weapon to hand, I attach the right hand socket. That's where that goes. And then what about if I'm finished equipping? Well, again, I'm unoccupied. Well, as soon as I'm finished equipping, I'm not occupied anymore and I can do something else. Okay. That's what those functions are. can attack, can disarm, can arm. These were very interesting how we match them together. So here is can attack. Like I said before, we're going to do one of these. We're going to say, okay, if my action state is unoccupied and my character state is not equal to unequipped, so I'm equipped with something, could be a one-handed weapon, a two-handed weapon, something, then I can attack. Okay. Similarly, if I'm unoccupied, again, it's kind of the same thing, and I'm equipped with something, I have something equipped, then I can disarm, right? If I want to arm, though, I need three things, okay? I need to be unoccupied, I need to be unequipped, right? So I don't have anything equipped right now. So unequipped, I don't have a one-hand weapon equipped or a two-hand weapon equipped. I'm completely unequipped, but I do have an equipped weapon that's in my inventory. That's what that means. Okay. And yes, I could have put and equipped there, and there. I could have done that just to have a further check, but I'm not doing that because I assume that if I'm not unequipped, then I have either one-hand or two-handed weapon equipped, which means that this is also true. Okay. But not so with the can arm. Can arm means that I'm unequipped, but I do have a weapon equipped on hand somewhere, like it's in my inventory. Okay. How about disarm and arm? What happens there? Well, disarm actually is interesting because what it's going to do is it's going to play the disarm animation. Okay. It's going to change my state to unequipped. Right, that's what it's going to do. And my action state is going to be equipping weapons. So I'm in the middle of equipping a weapon when I'm disarming. Okay, that's my action state. Same thing with equip. Equip is going to play the equip montage. This is the animation that I'm going to play right here. And then I'm going to equip one-handed weapon. For now, this is what arming does. In the future, we might have more variations where I equip other types of things. Okay, other than just one thing, this would change. This is only for now. Okay, and the reason why I'm saying that is because in the future you might have one-handed weapon, two-handed weapon, shield, helmet, something else that you want to put on. Okay. All right, save. So now that I've got this, I don't want to move. One thing we saw was I can move while I'm equipping or while I'm striking or whatever. I don't want to do this. I want to be unequipped, or unoccupied if I want to move at the same time. Okay, so for now, that means I want to be able to complete my animation sequence, and I want to put this in the move, kind of thing. So again, I can go here to main character, and I can hop down to where it says move, right? It'll hop over here, and then I can just put that at the top. What this does is it says this: if my action state is not unoccupied, that means I'm doing something. I'm attacking, I'm equipping, whatever, right? Then don't do any of this. Don't move when I'm doing that. Okay, now you may not like that. You may want to move, but what this causes is sliding movement, because that means I can slide forward and slide back. I shouldn't be allowed to do that, right? So that's why I've turned it off here. By the way, look is something else that we can remedy. Right now, looking actually just spins the character on a dime. You can make it so that when you're moving your mouse to look, he actually performs an animation, like steps to the left, steps to the right, and turns around at the same time, right? To kind of emulate what that would be if you're actually like turning around instead of like spinning on a dime. And when we do that, if we're looking, something else we may want to consider. Same thing with jumping. You shouldn't be able to jump and equip your weapon. That's kind of weird, right? So for now, though, we're going to limit it here, and then we'll come back and do it to the other ones another day. All right, and now the attack. So we had the attack differently than what we have now. We have some more information for the attack. So again, I'm just going to jump to the attack function. So here's the attack. And remember before we just did play the attack montage? But we just can't play the attack montage anytime we feel like it. We have to make some checks happen. So first of all, can we attack? Do I have a sword, or is it equipped, and so on, right? When I'm attacking, I want to change my state to I'm attacking, right? And that way I can't equip when I'm attacking. I can't move while I'm attacking. All I can do is attack. Now remember, our attack is very slow, and in the future we'll speed it up so that it's going to be a very short attack sequence. So it'll be something that's worthy of when we're fighting our enemies. We're going to make some enemies soon too. So that's the attack. Okay. Finally, what I want to do is I want to change the way we interact. So right now, the interact only works. I'm just going to grab all this actually, just to make it easy. So I'm going to go back to interact. So here's the interact function. I'm just going to replace all this with what we had there. So I want to explain this a little bit. So right now, when we press the E key, all right, and if my interactable actor exists, that means I'm in front of an item, and I'm within radius, then I can interact. That's what these three checks are. Remember, just like we did before. I'm in front of an item, right? The item, the interactable actor is an item, and I'm close enough. So check if the main character is close enough, right? And if it's true, interact. That's what this does, okay? How about if this fails, if the character is not interacting with an item, but I'm pressing E? The next part is, can I disarm? Like if I have an item, remember the only way I can disarm or armor is if I have an item. I don't have to check that. I'm gonna say, okay, well, can I disarm? Well, if that's true, then disarm. Can I arm? Well, if it's true, arm. Right? So this is something else. We can use the E button to do both picking up and arming or disarming. That's what this allows us to do. Okay. All right, let's check this out. Let's save all and try this out. So Control S, save all, Control F5, let's launch it and see if this works. Now what we should have is this. We don't have any means of notifying right now that the attack is over or that the equipping or unequipping is done. We don't have any means like that right now. We're going to make that. But for now, what we want to try and do is we want to test to see, can I pick up an item? Can I, do other things with that item? Let's see how it works, okay? So back to this. So press play, then I can walk up to an item, or run up. When I'm close enough, I can press the E button, and I should be able to pick that item up, right? So if I'm close enough. So why can't I? Well, because I don't have an interact method. I don't have that yet, okay? Can I attack? No. All right, so I can't do any of those things. So instead, what I want to do is in the base weapon, let's open up this blueprint, right? Notice that there is an interact function. If I double click it, it's going to give me this interact event. I want to make a brand new function called equip. Now this is the one that I'm going to get you guys to code in C++. I'm going to prototype it for you in blueprints, and you're going to convert it as part of your in-class exercise 8 to C++. Okay, let's try this. So for the input from my equip function, I want to have a character instigator, just like we do for the interact function. So there's character instigator. The character instigator is going to be of type main character object reference, not the blueprint, main character object reference. All right, save. In event graph now, I can take my equip function and connect it to my character instigator so it looks like this. File and save. So this is where the equip function is going to work. Okay. Now the beautiful thing is we can code this function, right? The first part of the function checks to see if I can cast the thing I'm interacting with as a character. Let's try this. So again, remember, this is the base weapon. So first thing, can I cast to BP underscore main character? Is the thing that I'm interacting with the main character? If it's true, let's save this, promote to a local variable called character. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Okay, now that I've promoted myself to a local variable, let's have a sequence happen, okay? And the sequence node is going to have 3 pins on it, okay? 3 pins. So this is what we're at right now. We're here at page 80. We still have 20 pages to go, all right? We're going to get this done. Don't worry. Next, now that I have this, I want to do the first node sequence. The first thing I want to do then is I want to do something like this. I want to say that can I check the item state? I want to change the item state to equipped. So I want to change the item state. So I'll say set item state to equipped. So it's from hovering to equipped. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to join this up here. I'm going to actually add in a reroute node. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say change state of weapon to equipped. Change state of weapon to equipped. I know this is kind of self-explanatory, but we're going to do it so that you guys understand everything. And then we'll do one of these and press OK. First part. Next, I want to set the equipped weapon to this. So again, I need the character this time. So character, hey character, I want to set equipped weapon. Here's my equipped weapon. This is the thing I'm keeping track of. This is my inventory item, all right? To this. So whatever the item is that I've picked up, that's the one that's in my inventory. That's the equipped weapon. If I pick up multiple equipped weapons, then each one of them will change. It'll allow me to pick up more than one weapon in this way, okay? So again, I'm going to say set equipped weapon to this. Set equipped weapon to this, right? Which is really like set equipped weapon to self. Okay. Next, set action state to unoccupied. So again, character, action state is a character thing. Set action state to unoccupied, correct. Because now we're finished picking up the weapon. Set action state to unoccupied. I'm copying this more than one time, just so that way when you look at it from very far away, you can see those comments, right? Next, set the character state to equipped, one-handed weapon. So again, character state is a character thing. Set character state to equipped one-handed weapon, because that's what we're doing right now. We're not detecting what kind of weapon it is or anything like that. We're just saying all weapons are one-handed weapons for now. Okay. In the future, that might change. So we'll say set character state to equipped. Set character state to equipped. That's really what it is. Okay. And that is your first line of action. That is like kind of like your first sequence. Okay. All this stuff. By the way, these are 4 lines of code. Yep. You have to put them in the right spot. Yep, I can do that. Next, the next line of action is I want to set the item mesh so that it ignores everything. So again, item mesh, I'm going to grab it from here, and I want to set the collision response to all channels. Set collision response to all channels to ignore. So what this does is basically says that I don't want my item mesh to collide with anything. So set collision response for all items to ignore all channels. So set collision response of item mesh to ignore all channels. Okay. There we go. Next is this part, which is basically we're going to attach component to component. Remember this? So, okay, attach component to component. Move this up a little bit so it looks like this on the side. And I'm going to do that by getting the character and the item mesh. So the item mesh first. So it says attach component to component. That's what this does. Okay. It's going to be snap to target. That's what this is going to be. And the character mesh, get mesh, this one, is going to be the parent. Okay. And I want to snap to the right hand socket. Question for you guys. can I not use the item meshes attached to socket, right, instead? I already defined this. We're kind of duplicating. Well, let's take a look at that in C++ code. If I have the item has a attached to socket, it is public, but it is not a U function. So therefore, I cannot use this one, right? However, there's nothing wrong with making it a U function that's blueprint callable. If I did, I can use attach mesh to socket instead of using this function altogether, which does the same thing, okay, which is kind of cool. Okay. And there's things we can do to make it even nicer. But for now, let's just use this because we're going to replace it anyway. You're going to replace it. All right, then what I want to do is I want to remove the radius. So first of all, attach the weapon to the character mesh. That's what this is. So attach weapon to character mesh. Again, all I'm doing is prototyping to make sure this all works for you. Okay. And I'm saying prototyping that way because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm prototyping it. You're going to actually code it in C++. The next part is interact radius, destroy component. So again, interact radius is this. And then you can not just destroy an object, but you can also destroy one component like the interact radius. This is why I didn't want to make the interact radius the root component, because otherwise both things would be destroyed, right? Like I said. So this is really remove the interact radius. Remove the interact radius, because you don't want it to have that carrying around with us. That's terrible if we carried that thing around with us all the time. The interact radius I'm talking about. That would be troublesome. Okay, there we go. So that is your equip function. Compile and save. Now, armed with this, this is enough to make us test what we did before. So let's see if we can do a pickup now. So I'm going to run over, and I'm within radius because I see the highlight. And if I press E, hey, look at that, I picked it up. Now I can try and attack, but I can only attack once because I'm still in an attacking state. I can also run over there, right? Pick up the item when I'm close enough, and I can press E to kind of stow it, but it doesn't really snap to anything, and it doesn't end because it takes me back to this state. I haven't been able to do this because I don't have a way of changing anything. So, but for now, we added this equip function, and I'm able to interact for the first time. It's kind of like my first version of this thing, all right? So this is where we're almost done. We want to add in notifies, but now file, save all. And what I want to do is I want to go to Visual Studio and put another commit up. View terminal. Almost done, guys, I swear. Git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added, again, the pickup interaction. That's what we just did. Okay. So what I want to do now is do notifies. That's the way to go. So notifies are interesting. They allow us to communicate from the animation back to the code. Let's do that. So the way to do this is, and it's the best way of doing it, by the way, it's really great. Its timing is great, and it's amazing what you can do with it. Let's try this out. So what I want to do is I want to go to blueprints, and I want to go to character animations, and I want to start off with the attack animation, the attack montage. So the attack montage is interesting because we attack, and when we're done attacking, when we're finished attacking, we should be able to notify the system that we're done attacking. Excuse me. So we can do that by calling it attack end. And the way to set up a notify is like this. We're going to go to here into this notify track right here, this one right here, the swim lane, right to where my scrubber is. And I can right click and I can click on add notify, new notify, and I'm going to call this attack end, press enter. And that is where I'm going to send a signal back to the animation blueprint that I'm done attacking. I can then copy this scrub over to where the end of this one is, the end of this attack action, something as close to the end as possible, and then right click and paste. And now my attack end is over there as well as way over there. So paste. So I have 3 messages that I'm going to send back from my attack montage that tells me when I'm done attacking. That's what these are. We're going to do more with notifies next week, but these are really great at sending messages back to my animation blueprint. Save. Let's do the same thing with my equip montage. This one is going to be more complicated a little bit because I'm going to have 2 things, right? My equip montage is going to have, finished equipping. That's the first one. Let's do that. So I'm going to go to the notify track. I'm going to put the scrubber where I want it to finish, something like this, near the end. I'm going to right click here and I'm going to add notify, new notify. I'm going to call this, finished. Let's go back to that. Finished equipping. Okay, so again, notify, new notify, finished equipping. All right, there it is. And I'm going to copy this one, copy it, and I'm going to take my scrubber and put it all the way to the end over here. Same line, right click and paste. And then so it's going to finish equipping here as well. So here, when I'm done, I'm finished equipping. Here, when I'm done, I'm finished equipping. And those are messages that I'm going to send back to the animation blueprint. The other thing I want to do is also when I equip and when I disarm. So this is a little trickier, not much, but basically what we want to time it is when I'm putting my hand ready to grab the item, like right there, this is where I've equipped, right here at this point. So here on the same track, I'm going to pick a new notify, and type in equip. This is when I'm actually equipping the object, right? And then similarly, when I stow the weapon, when I unequip it, like right here, let's say, I'm going to right click and add notify, new notify, and call this disarm. There we go. I'll tell you in a second, Alex. It goes inside of the source TPP starter project folder. That's where it goes. That's the correct location. You can never put it anywhere else. It can't be an intermediate file. This is an error. Okay. All right, so there you go. So there's your 4 notifies here. Actually, there's 3. There's the equip, finished equipment, and disarm, right? All right, save. So now that we have these notifies, we put these notifies in place, we can use them in the animation blueprint. So back to the character animation blueprint, here we are. We want to call these notifies, and let's do that. I've given you a picture for this. Right here it is. So attack end, we'll start with that, then finished equipment, then equip, then disarm. Let's do that. So attack end, we type in attack end, you can see that it comes up as an event. There it is. Right, so put that over here. And the next one is finished equipping. So finished equipping. There we go. Okay, put it there. Next one is equip. This one. And finally, disarm. Again, we're in the animation blueprint to do this. And what these do is they're little events that we can respond to. Now, what we want to do with these is we want to use our main character. I've already included main character here for you in this animation blueprint when I created this project. If I do a control drag, I get a getter, but I want a validated get. To get a validated get, you have to right click on the getter and click on convert to validated get here, like this. Once I have this validated get, I'm now going to copy paste it 3 more times. Validated get, validated get, validated get. Showing errors and actually having errors, 2 different things. Showing errors might be just, you need to reload the project. Okay. All right, so there's your validated gets. And now we can, because they're main characters, we have some functions we can use. For example, the main character has an attack end function. We coded this already. So I can say something like attack end. There's my function that comes from the main character class. I also want to do a finish equipping. So again, this one is finish equipping. There's that function again, right? Comes from the main character class. Attach weapon to hand. Attach weapon to hand. Maybe I could have used that one instead of in the equip function. And then attach weapon to back. Attach weapon to back. There we go. And now those are all the functions that we have in our animation blueprint, right? Very good. All right, so now that I have all these are messages. The messages are basically going to be used by the character. So when the attack end happens, the notify, the character is going to call the attack end function. And the attack end function, if you recall, if I go back to the character, and if I look at attack end, here it is, it's going to say that we're unoccupied. That's all it's going to do. It's going to change the state to unoccupied, which means I can do something else. Okay? So that's what it's going to do for all these kind of things. Let's try this out and see what happens just from a time perspective. So again, if I run up to an item now, I should be able to equip it, and I should be able to attack, right? There it is, different attacks when I'm done. And if I have a weapon in my hand, I should be able to stow it. There we go, goes onto my back. And I should be able to grab it and kind of put it in my hand. There it is again, in which case I can attack with it again. And that is what I wanted you guys to do today. Wonderful. So we've been able to do all that stuff now. File, save all, and let's put this up on DevOps. So view, terminal, git a dot, git commit -m. We'll say added interactions. So we added the pickup before. Now it's the so pickup, attack, arm, and disarm. Git push. Yeah, I'll fix it for you, Alex. Don't worry. We'll talk about it. All right. Very nice. Very nice. All right. So this is good. And this takes us down to the bottom of our project. Here's for you to do for in-class exercise 8. Okay. I want you to take the prototype that I made with you for the equip function, and I want you to convert it into equip item. So we can't call it the same name because equip already exists. I want to make an equip item function inside my item class. So the item class itself is going to have an equip item function. That's what it's going to do. And what it's going to do is the equip item function should have a parameter name character instigator of type a main character, right? Just like we did before. So again, if I was to mirror this, let's take a look at the function that's inside of my base weapon. Looks like this, right? I don't have to do casting like this. I'm not casting towards a blueprint because I'm casting towards, and in fact, I didn't have to cast towards a blueprint last time. Which part, Damien? The thing I'm talking about right now? Or is it complete? Is it out right now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? My mic is working here. Hello, my friends, can you hear me? I can see my mic moving. Okay, you can hear. Not sure. Okay, so going back to this then. So again, the equip function that exists right now has a character instigator, and I'm casting to BP underscore main character. I don't have to. Because character instigator basically says that this is just a check to see that the character is valid, right? This is one way of doing it. I could have also done it a different way here where I said something like character instigator is valid. So I could have done that too. Like I could have said something like get character instigator or is valid. I could have called the is valid node. There it is. That is valid. Right? Here is valid. And instead of a struct, let's do is valid as a branch, right? So I could have said like this thing, if it's valid, kind of thing, then I'm good. So I could have checked that instead. I could have said is valid, right? Like so. And if I'm valid, I could get out of this. I don't have to do a cast because I know that if my character instigator is valid, which means it's not null pointer, okay? And then if it's valid, I can stow my character instigator as a character. I can store it. And then from there, do the sequence. So it's kind of similar to this in C++, where basically I don't have to convert, right? But what I can do instead is I can check that main character is not null pointer, which is exactly like saying, is it valid, right? That's the first thing I'm going to do. If it's true, this is all what happens inside the curly braces here. Set the item state variable to equipped, right? Set the character instigator's equip weapon to this. Set the character instigator's action state property to unoccupied, right here. Set the character instigator's character state property to equip one-handed weapon, right? And then we're into this part. Set the item meshes set collision response to all channels function to pass in ignore, right? Which is this. Attach the weapon, attach to components. Set the item meshes attach to component function and pass in the required parameters. Character instigator's mesh, the snap to target including scale, and I've even given you all the stuff that you need. Text is right-hand socket. You can also change this. Instead of doing this, you can use the item meshes, instead of the item mesh itself, you can use the built-in function, which is attached to right-hand, right? If you try and do that as well, right? And then finally, call the interact radius as destroy component function. So if you think about it, all these are separate lines of code. So you got to think about it's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines of code is what you're going to write, right, in your function. 11 lines of code. Whereas you have this, right? So you have to consider what's easier. Is this easier or is 11 lines of code easier for you to do the same thing? And I want you to see if you can do those 11 lines of code. Questions around in-class exercise 8's new thing you have to do. One more thing to do with in-class exercise 8. There's 2 points of it that's here. One point is for that thing we just talked about, and the other point is building your project for Windows in full screen mode. Okay, I want you guys to do that. Again, make sure that it can work and that all the stuff we just did works in when you build it. Okay, those are worth 2 points out of 6. I've given you my 4, and that's a total of 6 points, 6% for your final grade for in-class exercise 8. Questions before we go for the day? And then I'll stick around for people who have issues. I'll try and help people out. I know this is a lot to absorb, but I want you, hopefully you're able to watch and kind of get the idea of all the piece parts that are involved to do what I did, right? Now remember, there are many ways to do this. Again, my partner likes to say, there's many ways to skin a cat. And I'm like, man, you have 2 cats. Don't talk about cats, right? People are very sensitive about that. But anyways, the idea is true. There are many ways to do the same thing. There's many solutions to a single problem, is what he's basically saying, right? I know, Alex, I agree. But this way is you understand the process, and then once you understand what can be done, then you can try to do things. And that's what I want you guys to try and do for your big game project. Think about the things that we did together in class. How do they apply? Is there something like that that they can apply to your project? And if it's true, I've given you a lot of tools and a lot of little things, extras like the highlight and all that kind of stuff. Things that are missing. What if I wanted to make it so that there's an E that hovers over the item? I want to pick it up. It just shows the E, but when I'm not looking at it, it doesn't show the E. As an example, like an E to pick up, like the number, the letter. Press E. As an example, right? Like we see in some games. Different highlights. Again, like I said, look at a door, you're going to get a different highlight. Look at something else, different highlight. Different items are interactable. Different interactable items, right? that we're going to be talking about. We're going to do this again next semester, but just in a slightly different way. Okay. Other options. Any other questions before we go? All right, guys, I'll stop recording this now. Good luck with this one. This is due tomorrow night at midnight. I will publish the videos ahead of time, so that way it'll give you a chance to get it all done, because I know there's a lot to do. Again, please do not use in-class exercise 8 as a starter. You will get 0. Okay? Use in-class exercise 7. Getting there, Tyler. Like I said, I've been working on a lot of stuff. Tyler's just asking about my midterm tests, and the challenge has been that I've had to retool this particular day as well as last week, because our Unreal Engine 5.44 is what I used last time, and now we're using Unreal Engine 5.54. Changes, deprecations, things that don't work anymore, and I had to revamp that. I know it's not a big excuse, but it is what it is. That's the truth, and it slowed me down a lot, plus all the other stuff that's going on. So I'm getting to it. I'll try and do it as soon as I can. Trust me, it's important for me too. Okay, but it will be marked very shortly. And I think most of you did very well, so you don't think you have anything to worry about. The other class, they have a lot to worry about. Okay, guys, and I don't mean the my first section. I mean the other course I'm teaching. Any other questions before we go?